We're good to go.
Okay, welcome to April 24, 2023 meeting of the CB6 Land Use and Waterfront Committee. My name is Sandra McKee and I'm the chair of the committee. The meeting is called to order at 7:01 p.m. Tonight, we are joined by District Manager Jesus Perez and Assistant District Manager Brendan Berth. Members of the public, you can raise any questions or comments that you have through the Q&A feature of Zoom. If there is time following the committee's discussion, we will field questions from the public. New York state law requires all community board members to have their cameras on and their first and last names displayed from the time the meeting is called to order until the time the meeting is adjourned. If your camera is not on and your name is not properly displayed, you cannot count towards quorum. We need a volunteer to take minutes tonight. If you can take minutes, please raise your hand through Zoom.
I see Gabe has raised his hand.
Gabe, thank you. We will now take attendance by roll call. Brendan will conduct the roll call.
Committee members, I will call your name and you will unmute yourselves. When your name is called, please say present. I will announce if there is quorum. Majed Abdul Samad.
Present.
Victoria Benatar.
Present.
Jim Collins.
Here.
John DeRico is excused. Adam Harkey.
Present.
Okay. Sandy McKee.
Present.
Rich Mintz.
Present.
Larry Shire.
Present.
Sandro Sherrod.
I am present.
Letty Simon.
Present.
Susan Steinberg.
Present.
Gabe Terzo.
Present.
And Brian Van Nieuwenhoven.
Present.
Okay. We have a quorum.
Great. The agenda for tonight's meeting was distributed ahead of time by the board office and appears on the screen before you. If there is no objection, we will adopt the agenda as stated. Members of the committee, if you object to adopting the agenda, you may raise your hand through Zoom. Seeing no objections, the agenda for tonight's meeting is adopted. The minutes from the March 27th meeting were distributed ahead of time by the board office. If there is no objection, we will adopt the minutes as drafted. Members of the committee, if you object to adopting these minutes, you may raise your hand through Zoom. Seeing no objections, the minutes from the March 27th meeting are adopted. They will soon be available on the CB6 website. There are several ground rules. No one may speak until granted the floor. Committee members, if you have a question about committee business or wish to make a motion, please raise your hand through Zoom. The chat function should not be used for committee business or questions about agenda topics. All such remarks should be made on the record by raising your hand through Zoom. Chat should only be used to alert us to any technical difficulties you're having, or to state in writing information like an email address that was already stated aloud on the record during the meeting. When a committee member is given the floor to speak, I will identify you and you can unmute yourself so that you can speak. Our first agenda item this evening is the Carlton Regency Corporation at 132-136 East 37th Street, aka 281-287 Lexington Avenue, seeks to modify ground floor access for the arcade to hours pursuant to the zoning resolution and for the installation of fencing in conjunction with the new hours. This is BSA calendar number 241-72-BZ. So I guess Frederick Becker is going to be making the presentation this evening. Is that correct?
Yes, Madam Chair. Correct.
Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Madam. Can you hear me, everyone?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Good evening, Madam Chair. Thank you. And good evening to members of the committee and members of the public who are watching. My name is Frederick Becker. I am the applicant on behalf of the Carlton Regency for a modification of a 1972 variance that was granted to this property. I'll go through a few details and why we are seeking that modification. The property in question is located on the easterly side of Lexington Avenue. It stretches from East 36th Street to East 37th Street. You have the residential building on both corners, and in the middle, for those of you who are familiar, there is the Soldiers, Seamen, Airmen, and Marine Club, a small building, part of the zoning law. The item in question is a arcade, which is located on the southeast corner of East 37th Street, the northerly end of this property. The arcade was a provision of the 1972 variance. There was a bonus given for this arcade. Now, it should be noted that in the zoning resolution, an arcade is distinct from a public open space, a POPs, plazas, public open plaza space. The distinction being that an arcade, as defined in the zoning resolution under section 12-10, requires that the arcade be open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Unlike plazas, which are open dawn to dusk and are gated off at other periods of time. This situation worked for a period of years, it's 1972 being 51 years ago. However, in the past decade or so, this public space has become a problem, to put it mildly. The space is a relatively dark space. It is not a particularly high space, and it's covered entirely, not open to the sky. In the past several years, and by the way, I have with me Mr. Aubrey Philibert, who is the building manager for the site, should there be any additional questions. During the past half dozen or more years, this site has become a problem, and especially during the pandemic and during the recent crisis with homeless and other vagrancies in the area. The space has been basically taken over by homeless. It has become an overnight homeless encampment. It has become a drug den. What were plantings and the planters are now used as objects for urination and defecation. It is a space that is undesirable, serves no amenity to the public, and we are seeking to change that. What we are proposing is to modify the hours from 24/7 to make it equivalent to a plaza space. We would like to fence the space. We would like to therefore have it operate in accordance with plaza regulations, which are basically dawn to dusk. As part of this modification, we are looking to beautify the space considerably, something we have not been able to do previously because every time plantings or other items have been put in, they have been destroyed or removed. And we think that the potential of modifying the operation and enclosing it will allow for a much better use to serve the public that this space was intended for. As I say, there are planters that surround the property. They'll be planted. The fences will be very modest fences that will be kept open at all other times other than from dusk to dawn. There will be seating installed. There will be additional landscaping as is possible. There'll be new lighting. It will be a beautiful space that the community can enjoy and can make use of, because this area is certainly, I work on the China building on 42nd Street, familiar with this site personally. This is an area that does not have a lot of public open space. So we think that there is limited any detriment to modifying the hours. We think there's great public benefit that can be obtained, and we welcome any questions and appreciate your consideration on the matter. Thank you very much.
I did have one question first, and I know I see hands up. This used to be a city bike station?
Not on the property.
Yes, at one point years ago, the co-op negotiated with the third party that ran city bikes at the time to place the city bike, and it was there for a number of years. However, the Department of Buildings issued a violation because the city bike station was not in the original drawing from the 1970s, which Attorney Becker referenced, which is part of the part of the issue that we face. We can't do anything to beautify that space because it's not in accordance with the original plan.
Thank you. Sorry, Rich, would you like to go first or shall I move on to Larry?
Yeah, I was just going to ask, I see that in the image that the arcade is open on the end, and then halfway down the block, it has an opening to the sidewalk. It's not open on the far end, is it? It's up against the building.
No, the way the 37th Street slopes downward
Right.
away from Lexington Avenue. So it is accessible either at street level on Lexington, or
Yeah.
when you're further down, there is a staircase that can access the property at that point.
The context for my question is closing it off will not remove a major avenue of travel for pedestrians because they still have the sidewalk, correct?
Yeah, it'll be the excuse me, the fence will be at the property line directly underneath the line of the building. There'll be no impact on the sidewalk.
Okay, got it.
And the planters are also within the property line.
I think Larry is next.
Yes. Mr. Becker, you represented that in 1972, when this building was erected on the corner, that for a time, this arcade was successful. Could you describe what was it in the nature of it back then, obviously different from now, that made it successful?
1972 New York versus 2023 New York would be my.
I'm speaking about how it was set up and how it appeared.
It appeared there were planters. There were no.
Where? Were they blocking off the edges
No,
between the
not.
columns?
No, they were not. The planters, for the most part, are located on the East 37th Street side of the property at a slightly raised level above the sidewalk. So they were not blocked. There were no planters, to the best of my knowledge, on the Lexington Avenue facade.
Okay, basically, you have a proposal and you're going to, in your words, beautify this. I'm just wondering, how is this different from how it appeared in 72, what you're proposing?
It wasn't particularly beautiful in 1972 either, for that matter. It can be made more accessible in terms of appearance, in terms of lighting. The lighting is minimal at best. I don't know that it was ever an attractive, since I was not around at this location in 1972 or for decades thereafter. I can only speak to what I'm told by the building manager and what I've seen over the past several years. It was never a particularly inviting space, is the answer. You can see it's a low space, it's dark, it's enclosed, it's there, it's just there is the answer.
Okay, let me ask you, since this was brought up before, in terms of it having been for a time a city bike station, and that being a use that would seem to be something that would give it utility, would you be amenable to asking for permission in this context to allowing that to return?
I would have to speak to the client and see what they have to say. What we're looking to do, however, is spend upwards of 6 figures for landscaping, for seating, for additional lighting that I don't think would be conducive to putting a city bike station back into this space once we make it a space that will be desirable for young children, old people, middle-aged people, everyone else to use, sit, enjoy. So I think the city bike station will be disruptive at best. That's my personal knowledge, but I can certainly bring it back to the client.
Well, in Stuyvesant Town, there is a city bike station located right in the middle of the playground, and it is compatible, and it does bring activity, brings people in, and I think that's what you need here because it's utterly unattractive as it is.
Well, as I say, they're spending upwards of 6 figures to beautify the space. The question is, if this was a consideration, it would have to be in conjunction with the modification of the hours and gates that are closed from dawn to dusk.
Yeah, the concern is that in order to make it attractive, you have to have some kind of programming other than just looking at some bushes that will make some reason for people to spend time there. And it is a publicly accessible space, which is why you got a bonus, and there needs to be some better effort, I think.
Again, I speak to the client, see what they have to say, and again, see whether or not by having bikes coming and going, you diminish. I don't know the size of the Stuyvesant playground, which is obviously an open air situation. This is a fairly narrow space. If you don't have the floor plan in front of you, but a third of the space is taken up by the building under the arcade. It is not a straight rectangle. There is a portion of the building which juts into the space approximately halfway into the building, where there are stairwells and elevators and access to upper floors. So it might interfere with overall use. It might not. Perhaps we could discuss further by looking at a plan to understand how this may or may not work.
Thank you. Victoria.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon, good evening, Mr. Becker. I have the same question, the line of what Lawrence was asking. The word beautification doesn't really necessarily mean that the space is going to be better used, better utilized, because the space has some negative connotations, which is big, it's low, it's empty. So my question, going back to what Larry was saying, is what kind of program are you planning on having there? It's like just children and old people sitting? Can it be implemented some kind of community space for building, like for
Ms.
daycare?
Benatar, I actually agree with you, just speaking for the board, because there is a committee that has been formed and they're bouncing around a number of ideas to really encourage the community to use the space more. Oftentimes when I walk by, you do see people sitting down and eating lunch and in that dark space. Sometimes there's a group in the summer that do yoga there. We want to really promote those same activities, but allow seating and better lighting, and we were thinking of really making the walls that you can't see more attractive on the inside. There's also entrances to professional spaces there, and really exactly what the committee is saying. We want to encourage the community to use the space more. We want to see more foot traffic through there.
Right, because the beautification doesn't mean necessarily that use will change. You know, you can put some planters and some lighting, and the space can keep abandoned and, you know, be not properly used. So I agree with Larry. I think this is a very good opportunity for the building having this closet space to use it for the community and eventually let people in the neighborhood come and have their lunch. But I like the idea of a yoga classes or like some kind of daycare, or, you know,
One of our biggest advantages is that one of our residents also sits on the Murray Hill Neighborhood Association, and she also happens to be on this committee, who is basically a think tank at this point until we get approval on how we really engage the community. So you're speaking our language. I'm very excited to hear the comment.
I apologize if I misspoke, because both of your comments were quite good. The idea is that we want to not just beautify the space, we want to make it a functional space to be utilized by neighborhood groups who might come, and a young school group who could come and sit in some section of here and have an open air class or open air experience or something along those lines for various groups of all ages. I'm not limiting it, but the issue that we have is that to beautify it, to put in new furniture, to put in additional tables, to paint the walls or decorate the walls and put in new lighting, we need to have some level of protection of those amenities, because unfortunately in the current environment, we know that as soon as not, we could put them in tomorrow and then in a week they'd be gone. So that is, we are
Very
asking.
clear. Yeah, this is very clear, Mr. Becker. It's like, the need of, it's clear. Thank you so much.
So-
And thank you.
Okay. We have Brian and then Jim, but I think we would like to move our agenda here. Brian, go ahead.
Yeah, so there's all this talk about how you're going to beautify this space and how you're going to make it more beautiful, more well lit. I see no illustrations, no diagrams, no pictures of anything, no renderings, no anything here. It's just basically approve this blindly, or else we will not put any improvements in this space at all, because it is part of New York City and anything that's not nailed down is going to be stolen anyway. And I am just like kind of not connecting here on like where the actual improved usage is going to come out of this, because it doesn't seem like you're really doing anything except just kind of telling us. If you have anything that would be sort of more convincing in this level, or it could illustrate how it will actually be a more functional space to the community, I'm all ears. We're here on the Zoom. You can email it into the office.
If I could just interrupt for a minute, Brian. Did this proposal not go out to the full committee?
No.
I sent the
No.
Dropbox with the entire application
Proposal,
information.
application, right. So it is available for people to take a look at. I don't know.
Yeah,
if
I don't have that email, but we should put it on the screen for the discussion.
It should be noted, we have not, other than the planters and the fencing, it is premature to discuss, given BSA procedure, the details. The BSA is not concerned with lighting. The BSA is not concerned with decorative quality, number of seats, number of tables. We really need to find out whether we can do this. And then once we do it, then we can go full steam ahead and work with the committee, the community board, work with the various committees, work with whoever is deemed appropriate from the area to discuss what they feel might be most appropriate at that point. As Mr. Philibert said, there is someone who's on the Murray Hill Committee, and she can advise the board as to, we should have this many tables, the seat should be this way, the seat should be that way. This is premature at this point. So we are short of showing you a rendering of the exterior. We do have nothing further.
let's
I
have
mean, yeah, I mean,
Larry and-
sorry, I was just gonna say, like, if you're gonna at least put in some additional lighting, you could note how much, and you could give some sort of a picture or whatever. Otherwise, you're just gonna keep it open during the day when you don't even need any extra lighting, and just gonna close it up at night. So
You need lighting during the day, trust me.
Okay, Jim?
Yeah, Mr. Becker, I fully understand that you would not want to put money down hole, even in soft costs, for new renderings, what have you, unless you are able to secure the property. That makes perfect sense to me. I would suggest, and I would move, that the committee go ahead, approve the application, and proceed with the rest of our agenda.
Larry had his hand raised. Larry, are
Yes, I did review the package, and let me just report on my impression of it. It following the proposed fencing and boxes of plants, it looks like it's walled off like a prison. It really looks like the property owners are seizing control over this public area. Really doesn't look like any place to go and enter it. All of those places in an arcade that you would slip in between the columns are gone. It's very inhospitable from the outside without having any kind of a concept of what would be done on the inside. And I'm inclined, in its present state, not to go forward and approving it.
If I may respond to that briefly, Madam Chair, the only real access to the plaza or to the arcade is via Lexington Avenue. That Lexington Avenue facade will be 100% open with the exception of the columns. All of the fencing will be folded back so that there is no visual fencing during the day that would impede access to the arcade from Lexington Avenue, which is really effectively the only access to the arcade. There is a small staircase going further down 37th Street, which will have an open door. The fencing that would be stationary would be behind the planters, which are inaccessible from this. You can't get access from the street. So the access to the space, which it currently has, will remain 100% open during operating hours. You will not see any fencing. It will be behind the columns. It will fold up or roll away so that it does not look like a prison yard.
Okay, and that's what I saw, and it made it appear with the stationary fencing visually walled off.
Right,
That's
but
my
that's
subjective impression.
right. I'm not disagreeing with that, but if you look at one of the drawings, and I can get to it, if you look at, I don't know if you have in front, E3 or actually P3, you'll notice that when the door is proposed conditions arcade only, all you see is open space. And then it's when you close it, it's when the arcade only is in closed position. So therefore, you will not see fencing other than as a station, all station.
Susan, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, it's not really a question. It looks to me like we're at a bit of an impasse because many of the committee members really can't visualize exactly what's happening. And I don't know if it's possible at this moment to share some of these drawings that appeared in the application or what, but I wouldn't feel comfortable either approving or disapproving, and I don't know how we can go forward. I don't know how we can go forward. And
I believe we're being asked to respond to the BSA application. Jesus and Brendan, can you confirm if there is a time limitation?
So we generally have 60 days, but that's not a firm deadline. It depends on whether the BSA calls this matter up in the time that we spend considering. And there are times when the BSA will hold and not render a decision on an application if the community board has not yet made its decision.
I don't know if it just helps. I'm going to pull up. I apologize for not screen sharing, but it would be a low fence. I'm going to try to hold it up along the.
And Frederick, if I could just interrupt, I believe the community board has that and could share if that's something we want to do. But
Fine.
I think at this point, what we'd really like to do is to make sure that everybody has fully reviewed this. It does seem to be contentious that we want, a better access for the community, and that we discuss this again at our next meeting.
I'm amenable to that.
I see 3 hands up. If people have, at this point, I think we should maybe just vote if we want to wait till the next meeting.
Madam Chair, sorry, real quickly, someone's typing loudly and it's hard to hear the speaker.
Yeah. Thank you, Sandra.
Yes, if you haven't been recognized, please mute. So let's have a show. Oh, Brendan, did you have some additional information you wanted to provide?
Yeah, I was just looking through the Dropbox for the application that was sent to the committee, and I do see a section where there are photos. I don't know if the photos will be of any help, but I'm going to share my screen right now.
And I think really due to the time constraints and our extensive agenda, that we should probably wait and let people look at this further. And if we can maybe have a show of hands of those on the committee who would like to review this next meeting. If you could raise your hand through Zoom. Okay, and everyone can lower, and then those who would like to pass a resolution at this month's meeting. Okay, we will ask you to attend again. We'll make sure everybody has reviewed the materials. And it's probably good to go past the site and understand fully what's happening. I don't know if at that time you'll have some more information about what's being proposed for community use. That would be helpful.
I will see what we can do in that regard. What I would just recommend to the committee is that if you look at drawing P3, when you look at your drawings, that will give you the best indication of what the proposal will look like. That is the key page. Open, closed, and partial fencing.
Okay. And Victoria did
She tried holding
box and print it out. So okay. But so thank you. Thank you. And we will make sure that the committee has a better understanding. And I think any proposals that you have would be really appreciated. It sounds like you're taking the community's views into consideration, but we just want to confirm.
We're very much, we want to be a partner with the community. We are part of the community, have been part of the community, and will be part of the community. So it is important that we coexist with you and we make this something that the community will use and enjoy. We're not doing this. I mean, it's a $100,000 plus job. We'll see what we can offer tentatively in terms of some schematics, but it'll be basically a draft. It's not the final product, but it will give you some.
And I think the committee needs to understand that they won't be fully rendered drawings. The BSA is a slightly different way of reviewing.
They are going to be schematic drawings.
Schematics, a bit dry.
A bird's eye view looking down where tables and chairs and planters would be placed.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
And thank you. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Thank you.
All right, our next agenda item is a presentation by the Soloviev Group and Mohican on their proposal to build a casino on the vacant parcel at 700-708 First Avenue between 38th and 41st Streets. This is an introductory presentation and an introduction to the project team. CB6 is one of the stakeholders for the proposed casino project. The project team will be keeping us updated. So I'm not sure who's going to start off the presentation, but please go ahead. And we are restricted to about 20 or 25 minutes. So just please keep that in mind. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Daniel White. Can everybody hear me? I'm sorry. Okay. My name is Daniel White. I represent the Soloviev Mohegan Partnership Team. I'll be helping to MC tonight's presentation. Allow me to express upfront our sincere gratitude to CB6, Committee Chair McKee, Vice Chair Abdul-Samad, and all of you here this evening for giving us the opportunity to speak with you. Our plan this evening is to introduce the committee to key members of the project's ownership and design group. We're respectfully seeking to begin a conversation with Board 6 regarding the tremendous opportunity we believe exists at what's commonly known as the Solo site on First Avenue. Joining me this evening are Michael Hirschman, CEO of the Soloviev Group, and Nelson Parker, Senior Vice President of Mohegan. By way of a little bit of context, Soloviev and Mohegan created a partnership in February of this year to formulate an innovative mixed-use development vision that can transform this underutilized parcel of land. In the roughly 8 weeks or so since the partnership was created, Michael and Nelson have assembled a world-class team of experts in design, open space, engineering, resiliency, and other disciplines. This team is now working to create an updated plan for the site that is contextual and addresses many of the important land use priorities locally and citywide. Before I turn it over to Michael and Nelson, I'm happy to say also that we're joined tonight by several members of the project's design team, who you'll be hearing from as well, as time permits. Our design team is currently very deep in the process of creating new plans for core elements of the project vision: the housing, the open space, the museum, and of course the gaming component. This is the first time that all the members of the project design team have come together to talk about their work and their approach to this project. We think we're about 3 or 4 weeks away from having updated design plans to share with the community. So we won't be showing project-specific renderings tonight, but they're definitely coming. And we're firmly committed to engaging with CB6 as a core stakeholder in our outreach efforts. As you hear tonight, again, time permitting, we're at the very early stages of this project development proposal. Following introductions by Michael and Nelson and a brief slideshow by members of the design team, one of our colleagues is going to present information about the state's RFA process for gaming proposals to explain exactly where we are and what's to come. And to that point, we hope that following tonight's introductory presentation, we can return to land use and waterfront, as well as other CB6 committees as appropriate, and with the consent of the board chair, to share our evolving design thinking in the weeks and months ahead. And so with that, I would turn it over to Michael Hirschman.
Thank you, Daniel, and thank you all for inviting us to dinner tonight. I see some familiar faces. We have had similar presentations before that some of you have attended. Tonight's is a little bit different because, as Daniel had mentioned, tonight we'll be introducing you to some of our key landscape and building designers and others. And so I'm not going to take up a lot of your time in an introduction, because I'm anxious for you to meet that team, which I believe is part of a larger all-star team that we've put together for this not casino proposal, but mixed-use community proposal. The casino aspect of it being less than 10% of the overall design for this 6.7 acre site, which borders obviously on the East River. We envision, and we are in the relatively early stages of the application process. Frankly, when we started, we thought the application process would be over by now, but there have been a number of delays at the state level. And so I don't expect that the applications from us and others throughout the city will be submitted before sometime this summer. And then there is a long period of time where community advisors will be involved in evaluating proposals. Beyond that, there will be rezoning. So if any of you are expecting to see tractors out there on that site within the next 30 days or so, you're going to be greatly disappointed. It's going to be some years before we break ground. But we do envision a integrated resort, very high level. I don't want you to think Atlantic City. I certainly don't want you to think Las Vegas, because this vision we have is one that we hope will satisfy the needs of the community, as well as the economic needs of the city and the state. We envision a gaming facility, as I said, which would be less than 10%. It's 6.7 acres. It's currently zoned for 2.8 million square feet, 4 towers. We're moving away from that concept. The casino would be accompanied by a 5-star hotel, perhaps 1,500 rooms. It would be accompanied by food and beverage, including some very high-level restaurants, some retail. And most of what I'm discussing now would be on the north side, the United Nations side of our property. On the other side, the south side, we would intend to build 2 residential towers with perhaps as much as 1,800 units, maybe a combination of rental and condo, but most importantly, it will include affordable housing. Right now, under the current plans for this plot, if you will, or parcel, affordable housing is not included. We would, however, include it in this. Most importantly, in the center of this would be a 5-acre park, populated by gardens, by trees, by walking paths. And finally, as a salute to the United Nations and a salute to democracy, we would build a museum that is dedicated to the promotion of human rights, civil liberties, freedoms of speech, press, where the world is under attack, democracy is under attack. There's a growth in authoritarianism abroad and at home. We want to show the world through New York's eyes that we as a country and we as a state and we as a city are determined to promote and to fight for freedom and democracy. I see Brian saluting. Yes, Brian, I did serve. Thank you. I am a disabled veteran, as a matter of fact, and so this is something that's very near and dear to my heart. We have gotten feedback from the community. You may have seen originally a Ferris wheel in the center of this property. The community feedback on Ferris wheel was not encouraging, so there won't be a Ferris wheel or a roller coaster or a merry-go-round. In fact, as it turns out, the Ferris wheel base would be so large it would detract from the open space, the green space, which provides or actually continues to give a very good view of the river. We have a lot planned for social responsibility, for involvement of nonprofits through the district and through the city. We also have a program that I'll have Nelson describe in giving back to the local businesses outside of the resort. We know you have concerns and questions, traffic, safety. We have the same concerns because frankly, if we are not able to provide convenient access and egress, we're going to fail as a business. If we can't provide for safety and security, not only on the grounds, but in the communities surrounding the grounds, then we also are going to fail commercially. So I'm going to, again, I could have a lot more to say. We're very early on, and we will get back to you with more specific plans in the very near future. We're going to be very transparent, but let me turn it over to our partner. We have so much in common with the Mohegan tribe. We are family owned. Our family live in your district. The matriarch of the Solo family, Mia, lives there. The adult children of Stefan, the oldest son of Mr. Sheldon, live in the district. His first grandchild about to be born will live in the district. So it's not only our commercial interests, it's our personal interests because it's our home as well. And Nelson, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay. Thank you, Michael. Pleasure to speak with you all this evening. I'm Nelson Parker with Mohegan. Michael's gone into some detail about the project. I'll give you just a brief overview of Mohegan, who we are. As stated, Mohegan is owned by the Mohegan tribe of Connecticut, so 2,000 tribal members. And I'm not sure how many of you have been to our property in Southeast Connecticut, but that was built in the mid-90s. It's largely been the most successful and largest resort facility of its nature in the Northeast. So we're the most experienced operator in this region. And from that growth and success, the tribe has branched out and we operate properties from coast to coast and even internationally, including Ontario, Canada, and soon to open later this year in Seoul, Korea. Project we've been working on for many years. But this particular location in New York City market, certainly a market we know very well. Many people visit from the market to our property in Connecticut, as well as many other states in and around the region. So it's something that we've been focused on for quite some time. And I think similar to Michael, we feel very fortunate to have become involved with Soloviev Group. We share many of the same philosophies as an organization. Certainly environmental is a big aspect of that. I think one of the things that Michael didn't mention is this project will be developed to be a carbon neutral project at a very high level of sustainability. So that as an organization for us is very critical, as is community. And so being owned by a Native American tribe makes us unique as opposed to some of the other companies in our industry, many of which are publicly traded. We're very much a family-owned business. And so community, being a fabric of that community, being long-term in nature is critical to us. And it's something that, we seek out. This particular project will have a great deal of economic benefits associated with it. We estimate that on a full-time equivalent basis, so full-time jobs, once we're open and operating, it will employ upwards of 5,000 well-paying union jobs. During construction, there'll be several other thousand jobs that will be created throughout that process. In addition, a project of this nature will create literally hundreds of millions of dollars in economic benefit, both directly and indirectly, to the state in taxes, as well as throughout the local community in purchases of goods and services. Very common for us, and we try to prioritize working with local businesses and hiring locally. As an example to that, we have recently rolled out our Momentum program into the local community, which is a rewards program. So when you visit one of our facilities, you accumulate points. You can use those points as cash and take those points and go out and frequent local businesses, restaurants, retail, what have you, and utilize those points to the benefit of the local area. So that's a program that we've already rolled out. We're starting to reach out to local businesses in the area to make that a reality. We've had it's good receptivity thus far, and something that will be long-term in nature. That's just a small portion of it. And then lastly is things like Michael had mentioned. We've spent a ton of time these last couple of months. We're making very good progress. We spared no time or expense in creating a team to address not only the project, but all the other aspects of this that could impact the community. And so we're very cognizant of that. What does a casino mean for a community of this nature? Traffic, sanitary, security. As Michael had mentioned, these are absolutely critical elements for us. If you were to take a poll of our customers, top 3 things that are important to them, those are it. So it's vitally important that we get those right, that we mitigate any and all impacts that we may create, that we devise the best plans that we possibly can so that it works as efficiently and seamlessly as possible. So with that, I'll hand this over to Daniel for the rest of the presentation. Thank you.
Madam Chair, if you'll allow it, I'd like to share my screen now. We've got members of the
absolutely.
Okay.
Jesus, is that Brendan?
You go ahead and do that.
Yep, you should be able to share.
Okay. Can everybody see this?
Yes.
Yep. Okay. So we have the 3 main design team members here. I'm going to ask them to go through their slides succinctly, but thoughtfully, starting with Big.
Hi, my name is Martin Vogtlet. I'm a partner at the Arcade House Group based in New York. We have offices in the entire world. We are a Danish firm that started around 20 years ago in Copenhagen. We moved to New York 13 years ago to start a large project here on 57th Street that brought us here and our established our office in New York. And we're, if you go to the next slide, we're working in all scales, and we try to approach product design, pavilions, buildings, floating buildings for students, office buildings for Google, master plans, all with a similar kind of innovative kind of approach that we have across all scales, and always keeping in mind that we work for a global kind of a system that should preserve our planet. And so in essence, like sustainability is an overarching principle. The next slide. This is these are some of our projects in New York. We have 57 on the left side, which is a residential building with around 700 units, some of it affordable. Then really kind of becoming part of New York skyline already, but really without being very tall. I mean, it's still a tall building, but it is not the tallest in that street. But it really becomes a remarkable entry from the riverfront. The Smile in Harlem is also a partially affordable housing project where we kind of interpreted the zoning regulations in a new way and created this striking facade. And then, of course, also the spiral and Hudson Yards that is bringing the High Line into the skyline with the green terraces that are terracing up the facade. Next slide. We always have community in mind when we design. We have this is our two projects that are in Denmark. On the left side, we have Superkilen, which is a community space and a public space that was informed by the neighborhood. This is one of the most diverse neighborhoods in the city. Over 180 nationalities are living here, and we asked them to contribute from their home countries different objects and installations on the plaza. On the right side is a waterfront master plan where we not only designed some of the buildings in the background that have striking silhouettes, but always kept that waterfront in mind and added, since the water is so clean in these harbors now, added a harbor bath where you can just jump into the water. Next slide. Then back to New York, we around 10 years ago, after Hurricane Sandy, we were invited to conceive an idea how to protect the entire Manhattan or the lower part of Manhattan from future floods. So we established a plan that would kind of raise the flood line around the entire southern part of Manhattan. And then we started with the first part on the East River, the first 3.2 miles that are now under construction, raising the landscape using the park that is built along the riverfront as a barrier against future flood rises. And the process to get there was very intense. So we worked with multiple kind of agencies, with the community. You can see on the right side, one of very, very many engagement meetings that we had with the community. We brought models, we tried to engage the community with our design process, and we're happy to do the same here. Next slide. Bring us to our site, which is on a very prominent spot, of course, one of the largest leftover sites. And we really want to make it something that is part of the urban fabric, kind of bringing the grid into the site, creating this large public space that Michael was talking about in the center of the development, but and then just like trying to work as hard as we can to make it not like a typical podium that is blocking all the streets and all the views, and we're trying to bring the public level down so it's accessible from the city and continues those east-west streets into the property, and ideally connects to the greenway along the East River.
Thank you. We're now going to turn to our second member of the design team.
Hello, my name is Alex Richter, and I'm an associate principal at Adamson Associates Architects, and we're an international practice with offices in Vancouver, LA, Toronto, New York, and London. Next, please. So We have nearly 40 years of experience working as the architect of record and executive architect on a number of projects around the world with a number of very, very well-known architects and Pritzker Prize winners. And it's probably worth mentioning that Pritzker Prize members or winners are it's just essentially the Nobel Prize winners of the architectural profession. And the definition basically is architects who have made a significant contribution to the cities and the places where these buildings have built. And we're extremely excited to work with the owners, with Mohegan, with Soloviev, and Bjarke Engels, who we consider a member of this type of architect on this particular project. And this is just, you know, a representation of some of those architects that we have worked with. And we have no doubt that this project will become one of those. So this slide basically shows a few examples of the types of projects that we have worked on, and they are all mixed use projects that have required an extremely high level of urban integration and sensitivity to the community. And whilst they are large, they required an extremely delicate touch in terms of integrating these both at street level and within the overall urban context of the cities where they're located. The one on the top left, which you may recognize, is the Kuala Lumpur City Centre in Malaysia. Beside it, top right, is the Shard in London. Below left is a project we're currently working on in Toronto called CIBC Square. Middle bottom is the World Trade Center in Lower Manhattan, and on the right is, bottom right, is Canary Wharf in London, England. Next, please. So we just wanted to show this image because there's a number of projects that we've done in New York which have really become notable and upstanding citizens of the city and have really took a considerable amount of work in terms of integrating them into the city, into the context, working with the community groups. Top left is One Bryant Park, which interestingly enough became a very important member of Bryant Park, which is a park which really made an incredible contribution into with regards to the transformation of that park
Madam
and
Chair,
of the community.
on privilege.
Sorry, Jim.
This is
we'd like to
all this is very nice, and with all due respect to our exhibitors, this is simply a detail of their past experience, what have you, and I fail to see the relevance of its application to what's being discussed for the area in the solo block. I don't think they're baked yet, or anywhere near baked, and so I don't understand what the point of this presentation is. Although I mean, they're fine architects, I'm sure, but as I say, I don't see any point to this. It seems deleterious.
May I respond, Madam
I'm sorry,
Chair?
dilatory. Seems dilatory.
We would like to move forward, but yes.
Okay. So, Mr. Collins, if with all due respect, the importance of this particular aspect of the presentation, as you said, which basically provides some of the experience, I think what is important about it is this, just to demonstrate to the community board that experience is very important with regards to delivery of the project and cannot be underestimated. So you know, I
well, I'm sure that if they're spending as
Jim,
much
please,
as they plan to spend, that they're going to hire competent architects. That's not the issue. Okay.
Yeah.
You've
maybe
been speaking now for almost 20 minutes, and as I say, I see nothing of specific interest to Community Board 6.
And Jim, if they choose to use their time in this way, I think that's up to them. We've been very clear that we have a time limitation. I think it's true we would probably be a little more interested in the process, and I know you have some material on
I only have one more slide. So if you don't mind, we'll go to the last one and then I'll hand off to the landscape architect. So what we're trying to stress here to the board and to Mr. Collins is the fact that experience counts and is extremely relevant, especially to projects of this nature. And for those who are interested, the presentation will be available. And all of these projects have basically provided landscape, have understood and implemented important and beneficial parks that have benefited the community in places where it may not have been understood, and it was certainly delivered. So they include these projects here. All the names have been listed, and we invite you to have a look at them and certainly ask any questions if you would like to. So on that note, I will go on. Thank you.
I know we're pressed for time. We do have one more designer. I think what I'm going to do though is I'm going to let OJB speak for a minute, and I'm going to just sort of skip ahead to this slide, and then after that I'm going to bring in Yanni, who can talk about the RFA process very quickly and where we are with the gaming proposal, and then answer questions to Mr. Collins's point.
Perfect. Thank you, Daniel. So my name is Jim Burnett. I'm the president of OJB Landscape Architecture. We're a national firm. We spend all of our time working on public open space projects like this. The fact that this project is kind of centered on community benefits and creating a park that's accessible to the community and understanding what you want in that park is really exciting for us. We've been with the team for the last couple of months, and a lot of the discussions have been working on how this park can really benefit and how we can continue and actually make it, as it is today. It has a fence around it, but if we can make it a public space for the community, that's the benefit. We've been looking at the neighborhood and looking at spaces around the area to better understand the program of what's there today. So I know we'll have more time in the future, and I look forward to meeting you in person. And I actually look forward to working with you and hearing firsthand what you feel is important for the program, because the program, the list of amenities within the park are endless, and we want to make sure that it's reflective of the neighborhood and the people that will use this park on a day in, day out basis. So thank you.
Thank you, Jim. So right now we're going to just spend a few minutes or a minute or so just overviewing the RFA process, so that members of the committee understand where we are and what is to come. Yanni?
Yeah. Good evening, Board 6. Thanks for having us. We thought we would go over the process pretty quickly. It's a multi-stage process, and even though the RFA was released in January, the 70 pages didn't really lay out many hard dates, but they did have a multi-step process that I have put together some visuals to help walk us through. So there are 5 components of the licensing process. The first one is RFA submittal. That is the only one with hard dates attached to it, and those are laid out below. The second step of the process is the CAC review and vote, the community advisory councils. The third step is local zoning measures. Finally, you get to, of the RFA process, the Gaming Facility Location Board issues recommendations, and then there are decisions made by the State Commission. So I have slides that go into these in more detail, and we're going to be starting off with the RFA submittal process. So the RFA submission period, as I mentioned, only has 2 hard dates. The rest are time periods. The RFA was released January 3rd of this year, and the first round of questions was due February 3rd. That opened the opportunity for any applicants to ask questions. And it's been 111 days since the RFA was released and 81 days since the first round of questions were due. This period has no set timeline whatsoever. And when the questions are returned, when the answers are returned, that is the trigger to set off the next step. So today, April 24th, we are still not even to the third round of this piece of the process. So once the first round of questions is answered, 30 days after that, the second round of questions will be due. Hopefully there are fewer questions in the first round. We've heard that there have been over 630 questions submitted to the state that they're working through answering right now. But it also means that since there are only 2 rounds of questions, it's going to be the last opportunity for people to ask questions. So can't guarantee that it's going to be less or that it's going to be a faster process. Once the second round of questions is answered, the RFA is then due 30 days after. So within this entire time period, the RFA process, there were 90 days built in, but we've far exceeded that 90 days since the release of the RFA in January. So moving on to the next slide. Once the submittals are made, there are 180 days for the CAC process. The CAC process is the Community Advisory Committee process. Community Advisory Committees will have 2 months to be set up. That's 60 days. And then further 4 months to deliberate on the projects. Over the period of 4 months, the CACs will hold public meetings, including the neighboring community. They will solicit and review public comments on the project, deliberate among their members, and then finally hold a vote. The makeup of the CAC is 6 local elected stakeholders. We've got Governor Kathy Hochul, Mayor Eric Adams, Senator Kristen Gonzalez, who is the senator for this project site, New York State Assembly member Harvey Epstein, who's the assembly member for the site, Borough President Mark Levine, of course, and City Council member Keith Powers. Each of these will be appointing someone as a representative of theirs on the CAC. And when they hold a vote, 2/3 of the CAC must vote in the affirmative for a project to move on to the next stage. Next slide, please. So once the CAC votes affirmatively, if they vote affirmatively, there is an additional 180 days plus EIS time, environmental impact study time, for ULURP. The RFA lays out that for any gaming facility within New York City, ULURP must be followed. All zoning provisions must be subject to ULURP, and the determination of whether gaming is a permissible use or activity cannot be overridden by mayoral zoning override, special permit process, or any other action or decision that preempts, circumvents, or supersedes the local usual customary zoning procedures. So that is laid out within the RFA, and it's state law. As a community board, you're extremely familiar with ULURP. I don't have to go through the entire process, but you're also a stakeholder in ULURP, which means that should we surpass the CAC, we'll be coming before the board again to present our proposal and get more information from the community board in order to successfully navigate ULURP. So that is the overview of the timeline. Just with all those different components, we're already going over a year. So clearly this is just the beginning of hopefully a long conversation with Community Board 6. And I'm available to answer any questions on the process that you might have.
Thank you, Yanni. That concludes our presentation, Madam Chair. Apologies for going a little bit, well, somewhat over here. But we did want to introduce you to the members of the team because this team will be coming back to you hope in the very near future with updated design drawings and plans.
I do see in the Q&A, there is one question of where CV6 residents can find the RFA. Is it okay if I answer that question and link to the RFA in that?
Yes, please. You can put a link in the chat. That would be helpful.
Great. We'll do that.
In the meantime, I think everyone knows that CB6 has passed 2 resolutions already regarding concerns about a casino in this residential neighborhood. But are there questions, specific questions that any of the committee members have? I know you'll be coming back to visit us with more information, but
Yes, ma'am.
at this point, Larry?
Yes, I thank you for this overview. I'm sure we'll be getting into the weeds soon. But I'd like to make an observation about this site, which once was a power plant. And because of that, it's sort of an accident in the availability of such a large contiguous area that we're able to do such potentially impressive planning. I see this as being, the super block as being most similar to the World Trade Center site. And I know that one of the architects had experience there with the master planning there. The feature of that, which I want to call your attention to, which I think is really important here, is that it was possible both with the original World Trade Center and with the current second reinvention of it to keep all vehicles, whether there be service vehicles, vehicles for people who were going to be visiting the premises, to be hidden and taken off the streets, and there wouldn't be any parking adjacent there to where currently we have a bus lane. So as you design the bones of this project, I hope you keep in mind that all of this could be hidden from sight, and it would not only beautify the location, but also cause a minimal amount of interference with the neighborhood, regardless of what actually gets built, whether it's a casino or something else eventually. Thank you.
I'd like to respond to that very, very briefly. Very good point, Larry. All of the parking will be underground, whether it's the parking for the resort property or the residential. And in fact, the casino will be below grade, underground, unobtrusive. So part of the parkland we're talking about will be on the roof, if you will, of the casino property. If people want to come in and use any of the resort facilities, the spas, the restaurants, the hotel, there's no need to go into the casino.
Do we have any other questions from the committee? Gabe?
Thank you. Real quick, are you expecting the bulk of your customers to arrive by car?
Oh, as a matter of fact, we discourage that. Grand Central's not that far away. It's a little bit down the line, but we'd love to bring in ferry service to a marina we'd like to build with a walking bridge over the FDR to the property. We don't expect, we'll have more details because we have a traffic report we'll be sharing with all of you, as well as further design information. But we certainly don't think Manhattanites that are going to visit the site will drive. We don't think visitors from outside of New York, whether it's from domestic or international, will be renting cars in Manhattan to drive to the site. And we're going to do everything we can, as I mentioned, to discourage vehicular traffic.
Great. Any other questions from the committee? Majed?
So more of a comment than a statement. I was just going to say it was helpful to hear that the casino is such a small part of the larger project. The committee has voted not in favor of having a casino, but that being 10% of a larger mixed-use development is actually good news because everybody is eager to have that lot developed. But also, Sandy, there are some comments in the chat that I'll ask that we combine them and move those to the public engagement event that Soloviev team is going to have about whether we should have a casino. Why do we need one in Midtown? Is it truly benefit for the community? I feel like this is not the right venue to discuss this, but rather the public engagement that the team will have. So that's just my comment here.
And I know you are planning public engagement, so certainly we look forward to having that with a larger community.
Yes, ma'am.
And you'll keep us updated when the schedule is for that. I understand that you will be coming back to us with more detail and maybe next month or the month after.
Yes, we will. We just wanted to introduce ourselves and a little bit of our approach, and to put a face to the project. But absolutely, we'll be coming back to firm commitment.
Great. So if there are no other questions, I'm sure, I know the architects are going to go back to work. But we'll thank you, and we hopefully we'll have more in-depth information and discussion at your next presentation.
Thank you all. Have a good evening, and we'll see you again. And maybe unfortunately again and again and again, you may get tired of seeing us, but we'd rather overshare than undershare.
Great. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Good evening.
Good night.
Thank you.
Our next agenda item is a review of the spatial equity tool, which was designed by Transportation Alternatives and MIT and has a wealth of information about our district. So Michelle is going to give us just a brief discussion of how it works.
Yeah, thank you, Sandy. So I'll keep this brief since we're already at 8:15.
Yes.
We talked about this before, so I'll just share this again. And I really want to bring attention, the committee's attention to two main tools here. I'll put in the chat the link for folks following, just Spatial Equity NYC. Again, like Sandy mentioned, this is a tool developed by Transportation Alternatives and MIT. And what's cool about it is if we go to citywide data, select our community board, and try to get a little bit on a more granular level. I'll just do community board 6 right here. This is a very helpful tool as we plan, as we think about decisions we're weighing on in terms of vacant lots that need development, or wherever housing plans or other plans relate to noise, traffic, a lot related to transportation. I know a lot of this will be exciting talk for Transportation Committee, but also us as Land Use Committee. I think we really need to consider these. And I'll bring your attention to two main data points here. Asthma rates and how high that is for our district compared to really everybody around us, specifically to Manhattan, minus Harlem, close to the Bronx. And the other here about traffic injuries. Oh, sorry, we are okay, air pollution, which is directly related to asthma, but going down to mobility and looking at traffic volumes. This is something worth considering for us when we look at what will occupy vacant lots in our district. When we talk about parking lots, talking about whatever zoning changes that will eventually bring a lot more folks by these means of movement. Yes, our district ranks, our community board basically ranks really well in terms of bus lanes, or in terms of maybe bike parking, not so much, but also you see bus speeds, and that relates directly to traffic. Absolutely terrible. And just in general, having this data set, again, I dropped the link. Actually, I give you a video in the chat. I'll just give you the website. I think this is a fun tool to play around with, explore, support arguments with data points that pull from the US recent census data. Just great work that they've done, and they made it free for all of us to use. So that's all I have, Sandy. I don't know if anybody has any comments.
And I just think it's really good for everyone to take a look at this and look at some of the data from our district. It's very helpful in just thinking about some long-term projects that are happening. Jim.
Is this on the DCP database where you do all the calculations, or is this something separate?
This is something separate. Sorry.
It's
No,
entirely separate.
This is separate. They pulled US Census data. All the resources are available on the website, but this is not related to the city in any way.
I'm sorry.
I see it. I see it. It's visualized. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Michelle. Let's go on to our next agenda item, which is really just introduction because we will need to deal with this very soon. And that's the the budget requests. And Brendan, do you want to quickly flip up what our previous budget requests were so we can just get that into everybody's
Yes.
thought process?
I'm also going to draw attention here to the fact that the agency response is reflective of the responses that the home agency requests have given to CV6 in the last couple of months.
Is it just me that's having trouble with the audio?
Can
you hear me?
No, I was having trouble too.
Same.
What Brendan said is that the agency responses here are updated with the most recent agency responses that we have received. So that's all he was saying.
Oh, okay. Okay. So we need to think of if there are new issues that we want to address and what the response is to these issues. Adam?
Thanks, Andy. So are you looking to solicit ideas tonight, or is this just hey, here's your homework and come back another? Okay.
Here's your homework. Let's come back. Let's think about this and come back next month.
Excellent. So I have a question for the office. So I think it's really helpful, the last 3 columns with the council member and the assembly member and the state senator. So have their offices ever commented on any of these requests, or has it strictly been city agencies?
Just city agencies.
Yes.
I think it may behoove the board to maybe redouble their efforts to ask the council members and elected officials about these sorts of things. That's why I'm always of the opinion that less is more with these kinds of budget requests, because then you don't have to ask about so many, but ask the elected officials, rather than having them report on what they want to report on. At the very least, 1 or 2 of our things I think would be advisable. That's what I always try to do whenever I see an elected in an event. If there's a reso or a budget request that the board has passed, I try to ask them what progress they're making on it.
Okay. Brian?
I would move to reapprove all of these requests to be submitted for the next cycle as a grace to the Budget and Governance Committee.
Actually, I discuss some of them because the irrigation system, for instance, is one that there has been discussion about, that it may not be a goal of Solar One. So I think it's worthy to take the time to go through these a little more carefully. Appreciate the effort, though, to make things, to streamline the process. If there are no other questions, yes, it is homework. Please think about these requests. And also, city planning apparently does use this as part of their planning process, so it is very important what we ask for. Okay. Chair's report. People have been asking about the Stuyvesant Cove Park reopening. And this is from Stuyvesant Cove Park directly. The construction manager says the park will be ready to open by Memorial Day. But the contractor seems to think it will take longer. Solar One is not exactly sure how to plan for this, but it looks like the park may be open at least during the spring and summer. It's not clear what will happen when construction for Solar 2 starts, which is scheduled for mid-August. There has been ferry service access in the park continuously through the construction process, but now that access point is moved up to 20th Street, and it was previously at 18th. And there's still construction fencing in the southern half of the park to keep people out of the construction area. So there is still construction going on, but theoretically, by the end of May, we'll have access to the park. And I think the next item is old or new business. Does anyone have old or new business they'd like to bring up? Great. It's been a long meeting. Thank you for patience. I think that is it. Thank you. I will, sorry, I have some text here that I have to. If there are no objections, we will adjourn the meeting. Seeing no further business, the meeting is adjourned at 8:25.